And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back with my co-host, Shawn Francis. I am Brian Altunian on Just Two Dads. Today's conversations with Dr. L. Brown. We are going to have an amazing conversation about education and a program that she has created that is going to blow you away. So today on Just Two Dads, it's going to be a fun conversation. I always get excited about that little intro music. You know, I feel like I want to dance. I don't know. Maybe it's free coffee day today, by the way. So maybe that has something to do with it.
I saw that.
Maybe I had a little bit too much coffee. I just want to welcome everybody who's joining us live on Facebook. Welcome. Please put your comments in and hopefully we'll address them if we can. And if you're not catching us live, but catching us on our YouTube channel, we want to thank you, welcome you, and ask you to subscribe, share this information with your friends and family. Anybody who you know that's dealing with a family member with special needs. All the work that we do here is to help highlight those amazing warriors that are doing, making a huge contribution to our families with special needs and to our special needs community as a whole. If you're catching us on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere else that podcasts are heard, welcome. We appreciate you joining us for this time. And finally, WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Just Two Dads. I think this is episode number 50, 58. We're definitely into our second year, 58. Yes. 58. It has been an amazing journey. We just came off a 2-day summit where we got to have some of our guests share their experiences and their programs and make the work that they do known. That those videos are going to be available up on our YouTube channel here for all to see as well. For a period of time, those that attended getting an exclusive shot at getting access to that information. But it was so amazing, and it just reaffirmed for Shawn and I the work that we started out doing casually as just two dads having a conversation has really started to have an impact on the community, and we are so proud of the work that we're doing and the contributions that the folks that we're communicating with are making to the world. So as always, grateful to be here. And as we welcome our guests, I'll say a quick hello to Shawn, and then Shawn, you can introduce Dr. Brown, and then jump into the conversation. How are you doing, Shawn? How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, thankful, blessed, and just ready to get right to it. We are, thankful to have this platform to be able to share with people what we do and shine the light on people that are warriors for the special needs community. And today is no exception. Our guest today is none other than Dr. L. Brown. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here to engage in this conversation with two members of my tribe, two new members of my tribe.
There you go. That is exactly what it is all about. Well, because you're someone that's, as a parent, you just do what you do. You follow your path and, answer your calling. You may not see it as such, but we like to say that those of us that answer that calling are in some way, shape, or form a hero, and all heroes have an origin. Powers come from someplace. So let's begin by you sharing with us a little bit about who you are, where you were born, how you were raised, where you were raised, and the things that that made you the person that you were when becoming a parent to a child with special needs.
Okay, well, I was born in a small town that isn't that small anymore. I'm from Ocala, Florida. There I was born to a teenage mother. And throughout childhood, I moved quite a bit through kinship care, moving from family member to family member. So by the time, the time college came around, luckily I was on a certain track in school for talented and gifted. So it was a protective factor for me to keep me in certain classes and to keep me out of certain situations so that when time came to go to college, I had the necessary prerequisites. And I actually didn't go off to college until a year after graduation because I was like, you know what, I'm book smart. I want to get out of this town. I think college will give me a place to stay and then a job later. So I initially wanted to be a lawyer. I was going to go into political science. However, when I arrived at the university, I assumed everyone would look just like me. They would come in a 1978 Ford Fairmont. It was 1994. They would have their clothes packed in banana boxes because I worked at Publix grocery store like me. But I was very surprised when I got there and I saw minivans and pink balances and pink bedspreads, and all of these moms were there helping their children move in. Well, I was 18 years old and I was there by myself. This is at Florida A&M University. And some of the mothers took an interest in me. Now, I didn't see anything odd about my being there by myself because the way in which I had grown up, I'd been independent for quite some time. So these mothers took an interest in me, and they would invite me to go to lunch and dinner with them. And I would watch them engage with their daughters. And they would ask questions like, so what was the high point of your day? And it was like the real life, TV show. And I was so entranced by this that they all had something in common. They were all teachers. And I was like, you know what? I want to be a good mother, so I'm going to be a teacher, because in my 18-year-old brain, I thought that education or being a teacher was the threshold to being a good mother, because I had never seen the active mothering that I saw that week during my freshman orientation. So from there, I became a teacher, and I taught in Atlanta, Georgia, and I went overseas and I taught in Yokosuka, Japan, as well as Seoul, South Korea. Then I married and I left the profession to become a stay-at-home wife. And later, through a difficult pregnancy, I was gifted with my son, Ricky, too. And that was my ride to motherhood. So one, I wanted to be a mother since 18. Two, pregnancies did not come easy for me. So when Ricky 2 came, I was quite grateful that I had the opportunity to be a mother. With that, I had subsequent difficulties in pregnancies. And it just so happened that my ex-husband was deployed to Iraq. And when he left, I then realized that there was no language in the house. So I had been like active mom, doing everything, but we had this intuitive language that we had done for our son. Like, oh, he likes that. Yes, he does. Oh, isn't he great at this? Oh, yes, he is. And when you took the variable of the other adult out of the home, I then realized if I wasn't talking, there was no talk. So from there, I then took my son to his pediatrician. And from a mom lens, I was like, something's going on with my child. I need your help. This is what I'm seeing. And he gave my child a physical, healthy eyes, ears, heart, nose, mouth. And he said, good job, Mom. And he gave me a sticker.
Wow.
So I get into the car and I'm having so many emotions go through, because I felt marginalized because, I was like, I know what I'm talking about.
He basically was saying there's nothing wrong with your child.
Exactly.
You're just being
like, there's nothing going on. Good job, Mom.
Yeah.
Children mature at different rates. And I thought to myself, if I were in the classroom and this were my student, what would I do? And I was like, I would teach, evaluate, assess, refer. In schools, we work with data. Everything's about data. Like, what do you see? Did you record it? What does the data tell you? So I went home, and although I didn't have that infrastructure in my house, I created it. So I created like a mini classroom so that I could collect data points on my son's development. And I took those data points back to the pediatrician. I'm like, this is what I'm seeing, chronological order. This is where growth is occurring. This is where I feel like he needs assistance.
And when you say data points, what were you tracking, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. So the first thing I was concerned about was the language, because I wasn't hearing any words. So I originally noticed that my son, even though we all have many intelligences, through Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, I noticed that he was very kinesthetic and he was also very musical. So there were certain things that he would make sounds, and from the intonation of the sounds, I could kind of tell what he was saying because it sounded like me.
I see.
So what I would do, I would then start to pantomime to music, lion, and he would then regurgitate certain sounds. And so I was like, okay, so if I give him new information, he can, absorb it and he can reproduce it, but I don't feel like it has meaning to him. Then the other thing I noticed was like receptive and expressive language. I was like, if I ask him a question, he knew that I was talking to him, but I could tell that he was not yet able to process what I was saying so that he could either follow the direction or he could communicate with me.
Yeah.
Then there were other physical things. So I'm really big when it comes to developmental milestones. So, and the CDC has a great website that gives developmental milestones from birth to 5 years old. And I think every parent should have access to that. But if you look at developmental milestones, I would then track what was he able to do without assistance, what was he able to do with assistance, and what was he not yet able to do. For example, 2-foot hop. So I first put him on top of a clothes basket, and I turned the clothes basket upside down. And I put him on top of the clothes basket, and I said, well, jump, baby. He wouldn't jump. So then with assistance, he still wouldn't jump. So then I had an aerobic step because I was trying to lose weight at the time. So I had an aerobic step, and I put it up to like a medium length. So it was lower than the clothes basket. And I said, jump, baby. And he wouldn't jump by himself. But when he held my hand, he would step down 1 foot, then the other foot. So then I went and modified it a bit. And this is back when we had phone books. And I took a phone book and he stood on the phone book. And I said, jump. And he went 1 foot, 2 feet.
Interesting.
And so with that, I then first foot, second foot. So with that, those were the types of data points that I took to the pediatrician. I was like, this is what children typically do at this age. This is what my son is able to do. This is how children typically communicate at this age. This is what he's able to do currently.
Yeah.
And that's what I consider data points. So it's not, I think, I feel it
sure.
is. I have identified things. I've recorded it based on date, and I'm actually comparing it to a benchmark.
Yeah, not subjective.
The CDC,
very objective. Very objective.
The CDC site that you mentioned, is that somewhat new? I've never heard of that before.
No, actually, wherever I train, I make sure that I let parents and service providers know about it. But if you go to if you Google cdc.gov developmental milestones, it will come up, and it not only gives you the developmental milestones, it gives you developmental play, it gives you videos of what you can look at to see what children are typically developing may look like at certain age. They start out with month 1, month 2, month 3, all the way to month 18. And after that, they start to 2, 3, 4, 5. And it also gives you things to look for, a checklist. So when you go to your pediatrician, that you can say, well, these are the things I've noticed. These are the things that I'm concerned about. So it's a complete guide for families, free, and it's on the cdc.gov. And then I know if you Google developmental milestones, it should come up. I'm not sure there's that website.
Okay.
And also it will send you, if you're a service provider, it will send you up to 30 free booklets that you can then hand out to your families. And then as a parent, there are print-offs that are available, and you can also receive free materials from cdc.gov.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's
amazing.
Fantastic.
Amazing. Just an elephant in the room. We've just discovered that we're not broadcasting live on Facebook at the moment. For some reason, we're recording. So the great thing about that is that people are going to see this recording, but for some reason we were not able to get our Facebook connection connected. I'm not sure what happened there. Shawn, what would you like to do? Shall we just carry on and put the recording up on YouTube? You want to try to connect to
you know what? If
live?
we can connect to it live. If we can do one of two. You know what? Let's go ahead and try and connect to it live. It means that we'd have to get out. I'll have to set a new link and we jump right back.
No. You don't have to. Here it is.
Unless there it is.
Shawn, just put it up here. I can go live right from here. We are live now. I like that. That was it. That was pretty simple.
Yeah.
Shawn Hall in Hawaii. So So Dr. L, Shawn Hall is our producing partner who is in Hawaii, and he just did all that. So
Boom.
there he is. He likes to stay in the green room, as we like to call. So welcome to all of our Facebook folks. We're in conversation with Dr. L Brown, and talking about her child Ricky too, who she noticed when he was early on that he was falling behind on some developmental milestones, and that the story, as we've just begun, is that you took him to your pediatrician, and he was like, he's good, Mom. You're just, you're being a good mom and you're on top of it, but he's fine. Don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Go away.
Tell us if you will. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
I was just saying, you, because you're an educator and you understand developmental milestones, you knew, not just as a mom, because I think as parents, we all know, there's, something's going on with my child. I don't know exactly what it is or how to articulate it. Because also your background, you knew that there were certain milestones that seemed to be missing here. And so you knew that he was, that there was something going on. I'm sorry, Shawn, were you going to ask something in that?
I was just going to say, is it safe to assume that your son goes by Ricky too, because he's a
Yes, he's Richard
junior,
Franklin Brown II, and that's a big name for a little guy. So we started calling him Ricky too. But
That's
he's
awesome.
actually known as, we call him SDYM in the social media world. He's Super Duper Young Man.
Love that. SDYM.
Love that. Love
That's
that.
awesome.
So keeping along with the chronology. So doctor says, you're doing a great job, Mom, regardless of whatever milestones you think are being missed. Here's a sticker. You're like, something's not quite right. And you've got him going through a couple tests and things of your own. Take us from there and continue on, if you will.
Okay. So at that point, after having my data points, I went back to my pediatrician and I said, well, based on what I'm seeing, I said, I'm going to try one thing first. You have to pick and choose your battles sometimes. I said, well, we're going to start with speech because it's the most evident. So I said, can you please give me a referral to a speech pathologist based on what I have here? If the speech pathologist then says that there's nothing there, I'll leave it alone for now. He gave me a recommendation for the speech pathologist. Speech pathologist also saw a delay in language acquisition. So from there, that then began my dance with service providers. Unfortunately, my child had passed the 3-year-old window. That's another reason why I like to get that CDC information out there to families, because you have a window from birth to 3 years old to be identified so you can receive early intervention services. And early intervention, I write a love song to them because they actually are skilled in holding the hands of families. Whereas once you get to the point of a child being on an IEP, the focus is more on the child. Whereas when you are on a family service plan, by the title, it's a family service plan. So they're coming into the home, they're offering you the help and service that you need. They're teaching moms and dads and family members the vocabulary that they may need to advocate for themselves. And I missed out on that opportunity because while I brought my son in at prior to 3 years old, we weren't receiving services officially until 3. So therefore he was on an IEP and I would then take him to the school. So when I took him to the school, there was one young lady who was a speech pathologist. And while she may not have been acting within her role to say the word autism, I really appreciate that she did. Because it was not something that I was looking for or considering because of the things that I'd seen on TV. And imagine this is 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago. So the images that I'd seen of autism on the television were not indicative of what I was seeing in my son. But when she said the word aloud, she gave me a venue or a lane in which I could start to research. So I then went to my computer and I started to research everything that I could find about autism spectrum disorder. And then I started noticing little nuances in my son's behavior, like the echolalia, like the stimming that he did. And I started saying this to service providers. That service provider, the speech pathologist, ended up retiring. So I got another person. And with that particular individual, he was not hearing me. So one day I reached out to another mom who I'd worked with when I was in Japan. She had a son who was 11 years old. And while he did not have an autism diagnosis because it was nonspecific, he reminded me of what I thought my son might look like at 11. So I then reached out to her and said, I think Ricky too is like your son. What should I do? And she was like, find the nearest teaching hospital. And I was in California at the time. So I called Stanford University from a Macy's parking lot at the mall. And I said, my name is Elle Brown, and I need somebody to put eyes on my baby. And they were really the first people that heard me.
And you sought this out because you still didn't have a formal diagnosis. And I'm just reiterating.
Yeah.
And so you're like, so what happens when a parent has a child, they suspect something is there. Their pediatrician says you're nothing wrong. Somebody else suggests, but then you hear the word, and then you're like, okay, now that I have sort of maybe a general idea, how do I get a formal diagnosis of what is actually happening with my child, right? Because I don't think most people know,
right?
If their pediatrician doesn't tell them, where do you go? And so this is such a powerful thing. What you're sharing here, you basically sought out this woman who said, go find a teaching hospital. We had this conversation prior to today, so I'm aware of that. And it still just now hit me how powerful that was. You took that because again, I don't even know where people would go if that's what they're trying to get a diagnosis. So this is amazing. I love the story.
What I tell parents now that I know more, information I wish I had known as a younger mother, bypass your pediatrician altogether. That is someone who is a general practitioner. Go directly to Child Find. Every state, every U.S. territory, every military installation abroad has a Child Find, an agency that works with families of children between birth and 3 years old with potential developmental delays. At that point, you don't have to prove anything. You go in there, they're going to come into the home, and they are going to take a look at your kiddo.
What is it?
Child Find?
Yes, Child Find.
And it's just F-I-N-D.
Yeah, F-I-N-D.
Perfect. Okay.
Never heard of that. Never.
Early intervention, but Child Find is all over. So find Child Find.
Okay.
Is it childfind.org or do you?
Well, I don't have websites with me. So if they Google Child Find and their state,
they'll find
come
it.
up.
Yeah.
Our early intervention and their state. And so as soon as you see anything, you contact Child Find, because one of the things that they're going to do, they're going to pair you with an advocate. They're going to pair you with a home visitor. They're going to pair you with an early interventionist. That is someone who is not only skilled at working with the children, but they're also skilled with working with parents. And one of the things, walking into a doctor's office can sometimes be intimidating, especially if you are uncertain about what you are seeing.
For sure.
So if you have someone who comes in that is skilled in early intervention, skilled in working with families, skilled in family engagement, two things are going to happen there. One, they are going to acknowledge your concerns. And that's one of the biggest things with parents, to have their concerns disregarded, because then you start to question yourself and then you go away. Next thing you know, you come back 3 months later and your child's 3 months older.
Right.
So you want someone who's going to immediately acknowledge your concerns. They're going to come in, they're going to identify what's going on, if there's anything going on. And then they're going to tell you the best next steps. And that's where you'll start hearing words like developmental pediatrician. And they'll say, well, perhaps you should consider visiting a developmental pediatrician. Or they may say, well, these are some strategies that we may want to work on here. But you want to ally a village member quickly.
It's interesting because in my family, my mother was the one who noticed. My mother was like, I don't think. By the way, my daughter Jo is watching. That's Jo Quinones there, so she gets a chance to. Jo's now 25 years old, by the way, and living in upstate New York and married, and Anna's a special needs teacher at the moment. So really amazing. But she wasn't verbalizing early on, and my mom's like, she's not babbling, and I thought, no, it's just my mom, kind of what we do, like, she's fine. This was my first child, so I'm like, what do I know?
Right.
And then we went to a neurologist. She said, maybe it's just hearing. So we went to a hearing center, and they like, no, her hearing's good. Maybe you want to check out a neurologist. So people kept sort of making suggestions along the way. I had never heard of Child Find, and you're right. While we were talking, I just Googled Child Find California, and sure enough, it popped. A couple things popped up there.
I won't lead you wrong.
No, for sure. And then the neurologist was who gave us our diagnosis. But in the beginning, especially as a parent, and dads, we've talked about this all the time. Dads were like, come on, the kid's fine. Come on, she's going to be great. You as a parent, you do kind of know. We men tend to,
especially dads that are fathers to sons. I think that rate the bravado and he'll be completely fine.
Right.
And it's such a crapshoot. I mean, in our case, we had a good experience with our son's pediatrician. He said some of the things that he's exhibiting are symptoms of autism, but some of those things are also symptoms of a normal, healthy child. We're like, so what does that mean? What do we do? Well, you begin early intervention, and that is probably as good an experience as one can have, because the pediatrician is not necessarily going to make the diagnosis. That's as good as it gets. We're the beneficiaries of a crapshoot in that case, because had it been maybe a different doctor, a different disposition, or maybe just depending on the day and the mood of the doctor, you might get, children develop at a different rate. You just don't know what you're going to get. So for you to recommend that's why I'm so curious as to how long has Child Find been around, because there's so many of our children that slip through the cracks and miss crucial time at early intervention. I'm just astounded that took place, and I consider myself to be someone who's conscious.
Well, I've known about it.
You can't stop learning.
I've known about Child Find since my son was 5. Again, we missed the window. So early intervention has been around forever. But Child Find itself, that would be some research I think would be worth doing to see, when did they start? How did the initiative begin? But it's an invaluable service. And when my research is with mothers of young children with disabilities. And one of the things that I've noticed is the trajectory of receiving services, and also the self-efficacy, or the ability to feel like they can mother, is greater with those individuals who were fortunate enough to be paired with an early interventionist.
Yeah.
Wow. Now tell us this, if you will, at this point now, where you're getting the services and sort of developing his care, if you will, by way of osmosis and necessity, where are you with regard to your career and your being an educator and everything at that point? Because these things kind of intersect, and you put on a cape based on necessity, correct?
Yep. So what I did, I wasn't working at the time. I was a stay-at-home mom, but my teaching certificate was about to expire. So one of the ways to keep it current was to get college credits, because I wasn't in the market for a job at the time. So I decided to go back and get a master's degree in early childhood education. And this was prior to the diagnosis of autism, because I was like, well, perhaps there's something that I'm not doing. Perhaps there's something that I need to do better. And I created this program, KinderJam, that was working with military families in California and other countries. And I was like, you know what? Let me go back to school. So one, I can make sure that I'm giving my son the best, and I can also ensure that my program has integrity. And that was one of the things, that was the first shift that I took after being my son's mother, because there was something that an evaluator told me when I was in Korea that I did not get until I became his mother. I was Miss Hadley at the time, maiden name. And she evaluated me after teaching a lesson. And she said, you are a good teacher, and good teachers can teach 100 things one way. I want you to strive to be a great teacher, because great teachers can teach one thing 100 ways.
Wow.
So that every child has an opportunity to understand. And I didn't fully understand what that meant, even though it sounded nice. And I probably put it on a couple of documents as a philosophy. But it wasn't until I became the mother of my own son, and I realized that if he didn't get it this way, I'm going to do it this way. And if he didn't get it this way, I'm going to do it this way. And
Wow.
I did that until the light in his eyes lit up, and I could tell he understands.
Got it.
So my program, I wanted to make sure that I had multiple ways of reaching children. So I went back to get a master's in early childhood education. So that was the first thing that I did differently because of my son. The second thing that I did differently, I evolved as a woman because things had come pretty easily for me, especially when it comes to the procurement of new skills and knowledge. There were certain things that I took for granted. Whereas with my son, he opened up a pocket of empathy in me that I didn't know existed. So I became very sensitive to individuals who have differences because, you know, I'm so connected to this child. So every step that he took, we were taking together. So I evolved as a woman. And that's how my mama bear persona emerged then.
Love that.
Right.
And so you started to describe that you were working with families in the services, and you called it KinderJam. Was that what you called it at the time that you were putting it together?
No, actually, I called it Ricky Two's time because it was one of those things where I didn't know he had autism at the time. And so what would happen is we would go through transition. So transition, we're moving from one activity to another. And I would notice that he would get really big emotions sometimes. And I knew that it was something that he didn't necessarily want to do because we might be transitioning to the park. And I know that he wants to go to the park, but I could tell that his emotions were getting higher and higher and higher, and that he was not yet able to control them. So that was self-regulatory skills. So what I developed with him was what I call reset time, because I'm not a fan of time out. I believe time out is not for teachers, but for parents. And I believe it's more of a child abuse prevention strategy, something that we do to separate ourselves from a situation so that we don't make decisions that could be potentially detrimental to children. Well, because of my comfort in working with young children, I didn't need a time out. So we did a reset time when he had those big emotions. So I would place him on the floor by an armoire, and between the armoire and the stairwell. And for whatever number of years he was, like when he was 2, I gave him 2 minutes. And in those 2 minutes, he could just emote however he wanted to. And I stayed there with him, and I let him have those big feelings. And then when we got to the end of the 2 minutes, I would count 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. Then I would give him a hug. And then we would, you know, I would say, okay, now, buddy, we're going to move on to the next activity. Now, those are some of the things that I did as a parent when I was starting to build these strategies. So the work that I do now are these strategies all coming together, because now from a reflective place, I'm like, oh, that's what I was doing. So a lot of this happened when he was not yet diagnosed. So getting to the KinderJam part, I then said, like, okay, what can I do to stop these big emotions before they happen? I'm noticing that they're happening during transition. So I decided that when we were doing that reset time, we were face to face, he was completely engaged with me when he got to the point of calm. So I said, maybe if I get a chance to be engaged with him before he gets those big emotions, that something might happen. So I took some of the activities that I did to take to the pediatrician to get my data points, and I gave him 45 minutes of my time each day. And I called it Ricky Two's time, and it was my time to pour into his love bucket. So one particular day, we were about to have a play date with some neighbors, and she came over with her 3 children. I was on the phone with listening to Greg and Steve and some other music, Jack Hartman. And we were doing all these activities that we do at home on our living room that eventually morphed into KinderJam. And she was like, you are working so hard, you need to teach a class. And I just overcome a miscarriage, and my ex-husband was in Iraq, so I couldn't try for another baby. I needed something to validate me, because I felt in my mind, my only job was to have my husband's babies, and I was not successful in that. So I was like, but I'm a good teacher. I'm good at that. So I went to the military installation. I said, you know, I have this thing that I do with my son. I want to do it with other moms. They were like, well, the only thing that moms are looking for in-home childcare. And I was like, well, I'm a mom and I'm not looking for in-home childcare. And I know there's a large stay-at-home community in my neighborhood. I think that if we create a class, they'll come. And the Army had just started an enrichment program, and I became one of their first contractors. And they said, well, what's your program called? And I said, I don't know. And so I came up with the name KinderJam, and I did 2 programs, an arts and craft class with a book reading and an arts and craft, and then KinderJam. And the reason why KinderJam is the activity that took off, because it was mobile. So I was able to, and the supplies weren't consumable. So I was able to go to different schools, the children's museums, the libraries, the rec centers, and I was able to teach this class to parents and their little ones.
Wow, that's fantastic. So
yeah, amazing.
Where is that? So what does that look like today? Since it is your profession, and I know how busy you are just from our communication with you leading up to this. So tell us a little bit about what KinderJam looks like today, what your day and career and life look like, in addition to that of your son.
And I just want to put up on the screen for those that are listening. It's Kinder, just like it sounds, kinderjam.com, KinderJam.com, kinderjam.com. Sorry, Dr. Al, go ahead.
Sure. Well, one of the things that KinderJam actually morphed into something different. It started out as a parent and me class on military installations, and we grew to service 16 states and 11 countries in military communities and State Department communities. Then when I migrated to Virginia, I took a different approach to it, and I started to hire and train individuals to teach the program. And then we would go out and service daycares and rec centers and
there you go.
Army community service entities and such. Then from there, people started to hear me speak, because now I was in a PhD program and I was doing guest lecturing and some other things. And they started to invite me to come in and do training. So now I actually spend the majority of my time building curriculum and training service providers. So I work with service providers in the areas of family engagement, particularly with children, families of children with disabilities, as well as diversity, equity, inclusion. And so KinderJam now looks completely different because COVID came. And so we made all of our activities digital, and we are rolling out an at-home service that can work with parents so they can do KinderJam in the comfort of their own home. With that, we prefer to go through agencies so that we can make sure that we're equitable in the individuals that we serve. So with that, KinderJam is seeking to partner with agencies that service families so we can get that assistance into their hands.
Great. Now, go ahead, Brian.
I was just say, is KinderJam a session that's led by somebody, or as you just started to say, parents at home can implement the KinderJam
for the first time
curriculum.
Ever? Parents can implement it at home, because we have a teacher, Miss Julie, who went to a studio and we did all of the lessons. And so now you can play them at home and you can use the material. And then we also now, what I understand, and looking back from a reflective place, that it's not enough just to give parents KinderJam. They need to understand the science behind, why do I do what I do? Why do we use the words that we use? Why is our wait time the way it is? So one of the things that I now understand as an educator who has invested in early childhood and in family sciences, I understand now that if I'm to be an educator of great value, I need to be an educator that increases the capacity of families, because regardless of how committed I am, I'm only there for a period of time. Time with me will expire. So the way I'm the gift that keeps on giving is by giving parents the tools, skills, and strategies that they can employ with not only the current child, but with subsequent children.
Much like a therapist, just like the idea when we have people come into our home for early intervention, even after we get the diagnosis and therapy is there, therapy is for the parent to be taught how to administer all that to the child. So what are the age ranges for for a child who would benefit from the services of KinderJam?
Well, KinderJam is 1 to 5 years old. However, with that parent engagement classes, we go up to adolescents, middle grades. And that's when we work with agencies to work on how to navigate parenting a child with disabilities. Because one of the things that, because I have the experience of seeing the world through 3 lenses as it relates to this topic. One is a practitioner. I've been a teacher for many years. I also, teach teachers. So I've seen education from so many different lenses. Then as a researcher, I take time to, to do my due diligence to understand what exactly is going on with our children and with our families. But third and most important is I'm a mom. So I have an intimate experience. So I'm able to see this from a very humane lens because I have walked the walks. And there's certain things that you only know and when you know.
That is absolutely right. You got to live it to know it. Yeah.
You got to live it to know it. So when working with families, now that I've been able to live all of these different stages of development with my son, I was able to chronicle those experiences, and I was able to then pull out the curriculum that I created for his life. So when we got to 7 years old, we moved into social and emotional largely because I wanted him to have a secure self-image. And then when we got to about 11 years old, we started working heavily on life skills because I realized I'm not raising a child, but I'm raising an adult, and I want him to be self-sufficient. So
perfect.
Boom.
I want to touch, right on that. And the work that Brian and I do outside of the podcast is in financial services, building a bridge between, the life that one has versus the one that they want. And especially in the special needs community, that means not just the life that you want, but the life that you want your child to have when you exist only in memory. So with that said, I'm going to ask this from a very selfish standpoint. What would the benefit be of KinderJam? Because you talked about life skills at 11 and 12 and that sort of thing. My son is 15. He's in his second year of high school on paper, but the first one in reality because his first year was all virtual due to COVID. He's learning life skills in school. He actually has a kitchen in his classroom and stuff like that. And right now at this phase, even though Brian and I have created this mission, I still feel like a parent outside of the mission, just constantly thinking about what comes, what is that life going to look like when we're not here? So with that said, what would parents of a 15-year-old child, like in our case, be able to apply from KinderJam as it relates to life skills and the increase of independence?
Well, that's the beauty of KinderJam. It grew with me. When KinderJam was started, I was the mom of a toddler. So everything that we did, we focused on the things that toddlers need. So while we've kept the name, it's grown with me. So now that I am the mother of a 15-year-old as well, one of the things that I focus on when talking with families is roots and wings. So we want to give our children roots that they know they have a secure place with us, but we also want to give them wings so that they have the confidence to explore other things. So one of the things that I started with Ricky too, I first gave him a debit card. And I actually, again, I'm a bit extreme when it comes to certain things because I made my son my absolute focus. So we moved into a very insular neighborhood. There's like a live, work, play environment that has the housing dwellings up top and restaurants and stores beneath, because I believe that would give him an opportunity to be independent. So with that, he's able to go to Target, and I would scaffold that. And scaffold means, I would give him the support he needed and then slowly take it away as he develops. So for instance, with life skills, I got him a debit card, and first we would go into the store together with a list, and we would go through the aisles and we would get the things that we needed, and we would go through the motions of going through the teller. Then from there, I went to a place where he would go and I would FaceTime him. So he was going and he was walking through Target, and I would be on his phone helping him navigate. Then we moved from there to pictures. So then his grocery list would be in pictures with the aisle numbers. And so at that point, I'm not on FaceTime with him, but he's navigating Target with these pictures. So he then started using problem solving skills. Like he would then go to the associate when he couldn't find something, or, he would ask for assistance from another shopper if it was something that he needed. and he would successfully be able to procure all the items that he was sent to give.
That's
Now
our goal.
Boom. And now he's at the point where I can simply give him a list, and he can go to Target. He can get the list. There's a video that we did on YouTube when he told me something that I didn't know, that he's intimidated by the self-checkout now. And so he said one day he decided, because all the lines were so long, he decided to go to self-checkout. And he said, even though he was a little afraid, he said, I did it, Mom. So
Love
with that, those are wings. So I curate experiences for my child. I leave nothing to chance. So if I want him to learn something, I believe that it is my job to teach him explicitly. And that goes back from when our children are young and we start learning about autism. And we know that with autism, sometimes the brain synapses don't connect as readily as it does for a neurotypical person. So with that, I see our children as little computers, and we have to input that information. And then, once we've programmed them, they can then, move forward and do. And then eventually they start connecting those synapses, like index cards in the brain of all of these different things that we've taught them.
Interesting. Fascinating. I love that idea, guiding. First of all, roots and wings is such a beautiful concept. In general, roots and wings. We all should utilize that with our children, right?
And I say that because it's very scary for parents, because it's hard to let our children go into this big world made of people who sometimes don't treat us well as neurotypical people. Right. So with that, I have to stay prayerful so that I trust, because if I don't trust, then I limit him. And so with that, the roots and wings are something I tell myself that I need to give him, so that I know that I want to keep him close. I want to keep him in a bubble, but there is going to be a time when I will exist only in memory. And I need to know that I have given him opportunity to gain all of the skills that he needs to maximize his personal potential.
For sure. Shawn asked, how do people, on your site, how do they purchase services with you or product, or this is a business, obviously, for you.
So what currently our largest focus is on training and development. So I work largely with government agencies and schools to train their service providers. However, as God would have it, my feet have been led to walk within my purpose. And I can do this now because my son is 15 and thriving. I'm going to start working directly with parents. I'm going to start working directly with families so that we can start at young. What are the fundamental things that we might need to have our children understand and know so they can be successful in that next developmental stage? And if I have a child who's between the ages of 7 and 11, what might I need to be doing right now to ensure that my child is able to be successful at 15 and beyond? And if I have a child who's 11 to 15, what might I need to be doing right now to ensure that my child is able to enjoy emerging adulthood? So it's one of those things where I had to walk the walk. And it was something that the village told me I needed to do, because, one of the things that Brian said, sometimes we take things for granted because we're doing them. I was in it. I'm still in it, but I was in it. So I was living in triage mode for so many years. Like, what do I need to do now? What's the next step? What do I have to get done? And I chronicled my journey, and in these were all these nuggets that people had been following for years. And they were like, I followed you to know what to do with my child. You need to put it in a book. You need to put it in a class. And that's where we are now.
I love it.
So right now, someone could go to KinderJam and purchase your services of the training curriculum then?
So right now, someone can go to KinderJam and they can request me to bring a training through their agency or through their community organization. In the next probably about 2 months, parents will be able to enroll directly. But currently, I go through agencies, and I'm usually now since COVID via Zoom, and the agency, like new parent support, may bring me in, or exceptional family member program. So generally, the way the site is set up now, that those are service providers who are going onto the site to bring me into their agency. But one of the things that now I'm realizing that there are parents who are not connected to these organizations who want this information as well.
Right.
Definitely.
Well,
definitely.
I know that speaking for him, I know Shawn and Laura would, love to have conversation with you as Elijah is now moving into that young adult.
Boom.
Even as
Definitely.
a 14-year-old too, who's neurotypical, and I'm like, I could use some help here. So, like exactly how I'm supposed to navigate certain things.
That is the beauty of KinderJam. What I learned with the majority of my clients in KinderJam are neurotypical families.
Interesting.
Because the thing about it, what I've done to educate my own son works with all children, because all children need explicit instruction. However, what motivated me was to find out what my child needed. And there are some parents who have now said, well, you know what? My kid could benefit from that as well. But KinderJam, one of the reasons why I don't talk about it a whole lot, because in my brain, KinderJam is my what. My why is that I wanted to help my child maximize his personal potential. And that has changed. My what changed as he grew. Like, he doesn't take KinderJam anymore. He outgrew it, but my why stays consistent.
It's funny as you were saying that and talking about how it's benefit for a neurotypical child or otherwise, because I am from the U.S. Virgin Islands, where our show is heard. I grew up in an environment that is, although predominantly Black, there's different cultures, and I've had friends and relationships I'm as worldly, as open as I think most people would come. Despite that, there is nothing like my son's diagnosis of autism, and not at the age of 3, but I mean within the last year since us doing this podcast. Nothing like that diagnosis, which has that has reminded me that we are more alike than we are otherwise. And I've been saying that for years, but since we started doing this show, we came up with it. We realized there really is no such thing as special needs. We usually close the show with this, but everyone needs the same thing. Everyone needs to know that they're seen, that they're heard, that they're loved, that they matter. And so when you talk about all the things that are needed for children or loved ones with special needs, or the people that are caring for them, services, financial awareness, knowing that you matter, having some sense of comfort and that people are going to treat you right. That is something that everybody needs. And just speaking of time moving faster than anticipated, I'm going to throw a question at you that we usually will ask of our guests. Our ability, we desire, each of us, and I think I speak for you as well, and most of the people that we're blessed to have listened to us or watch us, would like to leave the world in a better place than it was before. And our ability to do that is predicated upon our ability to change, right? And so with that said, let me ask you this. If you can, think of just one thing that a philosophy or a belief that you've held dear, that you have sworn by, that you now no longer feel the same way about.
So something that I once believed, and now I would say
believe strongly, would die for, almost. Yeah.
Not sure about die for, but I did believe it strong.
I said almost, strong faith.
It's I used to believe in nature versus nurture. I used to believe that there were certain things that you were born with, you can high aptitude for learning. And then I believe that there was loving home. So there are some people, they would have the argument of which is more important, nature versus nurture. And then in becoming my son's mother, I realized that I grew up with nature. I had an innate ability to procure information easily. But even with that, I only got so far. because my exposure was limited, and some of the secure bonds that I could have developed early on, I did not have an opportunity to develop. However, my son, who is on the autism spectrum, is far more gifted than I have ever been, because he works with nature and nurture. So he has his natural abilities, but he also has a parent or parents who are curating learning experiences for him. So with that comes my strength-based perspective of now how I see the world, that we all have the ability to do. We just have to find the people who are willing to support us as we grow. So to find out where a child is today, and my job is just to take them to the very next step. And then when they get to that next step, just take them to the very next step. Whereas I used to think that some people just had it and some people didn't. Now I know that we all have it, but some of us are blessed to have people who have invested in us, and some of us didn't have people who invested in us. So with that, it gets to my overarching belief in life now as a mother, a professional, and a researcher. I believe that all families deserve to win, and every child deserves to be loved and cared for well. With that, I also believe that that is the reason why high quality training are needed for both parents and service providers, because some things just aren't innate. They want us to believe that you're supposed to know this, and good parents are this, and the other. But if people go to school for years and years and years to learn to be teachers, to learn to be practitioners, then I believe that parents should have the opportunity to procure some of those same skills so they can employ it in their homes.
Agreed. Well,
Wow.
I know, again, we come to this point every time in our podcast. We're like, oh man, there's so many more things for us to talk about. And we're wrapping, and fine, we're wrapping our show before we're even like, we're just kind of getting into it. But this has been fascinating, and there's so many great nuggets. I love roots and wings. I'm going to use that now in everything that I do, because that's so powerful.
Notes.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. L. It really was such a huge pleasure having you here today, and sharing your story with our listeners, our viewers, and again on our YouTube channel. So for everybody who's seeing this after the fact, please go to kinderjam.com and take a look around and see. Dr. L, I feel, is going to be not only is she going to have a book coming out, probably we'll have several, and you'll see her on the speaking circuit, I know, in no time. So fascinating. Thank you again for being with us today. It was absolutely amazing. And as we sign off at this show, one thing I say always, now more than ever, empathy and love is something that we all need. If you're looking at an experience, if you look at it through the glasses or the lenses, if you will, of empathy, know that families are all going through something, and have some care. And if you look through the lens of love as opposed to hate and divisiveness, you're also going to find the world is going to be a much better place. So empathy and love constantly. Thank you again, Shawn. If you want to sign us off, it was a fantastic, what an amazing hour. I'm so blessed and blown away, and I'm thrilled. Last thing I'll say is that my daughter Jordan, who is in the classroom, she actually said she's going to start implementing some of the things that you said in her classroom. That she got a chance to listen in and catch you live, because I know that it's going to have ripple effects everywhere we go.
Most
Shawn
definitely.
Francis, please.
Yes, I want to thank Dr. L. Brown. We're so honored to have you here today, and we don't know in what capacity or how, but we are going to be working together soon. We know that much. I want to thank everyone again that may be listening or watching live on Facebook, after the fact on YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts, those in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And of course, I want to thank the women in my life, my mom, Jan, and my amazing wife, Laura. I couldn't begin to even try to be who I hope to be without you. And again, if you're watching this, remember, there is no such thing as special needs. We all have the same need to be loved, heard, seen, and know that we matter. And just keep in mind that somebody someplace needs to know that you, in fact, love them. And with that said, as long as you're watching or listening, we love you, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys next time. Dr. L, thank you again so much.
It was my absolute pleasure.
Bye, everybody. Catch you next week.